I've had a couple of pressure injuries in the 23 years that I've been a wheelchair user, mainly more within the first 5 years after my accident. The one that's most prominent in my mind is after I was discharged from hospital, and I was left hospital and I didn't take any information, I wasn't given anything, or I didn't retain any information about self-care and looking after my skin in particular. Partly as well because there was so much more information with a life-changing condition to understand. And skin really was way down on that list of things that I was trying to sort out. Nobody was coming out, I guess, to check up on me or look out for me. There was no regular telephone calls. I was very much on my own. And I ditched the hospital bed that I'd been given and bought a double bed with a spring mattress. My hip would just sleep each night, but just on the spring, and I wasn't aware of that, and I wasn't checking my skin with a mirror or any of that sort of stuff. And then one day I felt really unwell, and I'd noticed that there was like some sort of discharge on the bed, and obviously that was then from the wound, and so I got my mum to come in and have a look. I could tell from her face that something wasn't right, and then she showed me a mirror, and I just saw this horrendous wound that was on my hip. And I was like, well, where does that come from? Because obviously what I didn't realise is it's not, the tear is coming from within rather than something upwards. So actually, I can't feel anything. I've got no feeling or movement from the belly button down. Okay. But then after that, I became almost obsessive about my skin to the point that I cut all the pockets off all my trousers. I wouldn't wear jeans or anything like that. I wouldn't spend a long time out of my chair. I was real paranoid about getting on flights and things like that because I didn't want any of this stuff to happen again. Yeah.
So do you feel you were caused harm, essentially, by not having the information to care for yourself?
It feels difficult to say that because I don't think it was through any ill will, but there was a form of neglect in there, I think, because we treat the whole person.
Absolutely.
And the whole person is every part of the whole person. Yes. And skin is the whole person. And if it breaks down in one place, somebody who may have been able to go home within a week will end up in hospital in a great deal of discomfort and feel very unwell for 5-6 times longer than they need to be. And the emotional cost of that, the physical cost of that, the psychological cost of that will last for many years afterwards. And harm, I think, is the way that we need to describe that, because if you took a knife to somebody and just lacerated down there and that caused an open wound, we would be absolutely appalled by that. Yeah. But that sort of wound can appear on someone just by not moving them or turning them or looking after their skin or teaching them how to use a mirror. And you wouldn't do that with a knife. No. So why would you leave somebody sat in the same position for many hours at a time?
So this was avoidable, wasn't it? If you'd been given the information to alert you to the fact that this was a possibility that you would develop a pressure injury and what you could do to protect yourself, you would have done that.
100%, yeah, 100%. But I needed that constant reminder because there was so much. And I think, if you've got somebody in who's got dementia or cancer, all of this is very difficult, complex, life-changing information to retain that is incredibly overwhelming. So you need to know, it's important for you to know that there are people out there looking out for you because you're doing the best that you can do, but you can't remember everything. It's just not possible. I had maybe 5 weeks off work with a reoccurring skin issue that happened throughout the course of the year. Even by going to my GP, nobody was coming out to look at my home. That I was having to, every time it happened, I had to get out of bed, get dressed, drive to the GP, transfer onto a plinth, and every time I did that, that made it worse. Yeah. The 4th or 5th time that it happened, my wife forced me to go to the GP, who then admitted me straight away into the AMU at another hospital. And within the first 10 minutes of being in there, I didn't want to go into hospital because I knew I was worried about actually how my chair and disability would be cared for because I was in for something else. I said within the first 10 minutes, look, I need turning every 4 hours. I need to be on a certain type of mattress. And within the first handover, none of that information had been retained by anyone. So I had to explain it again. But by that point, I was actually getting more groggy and less with it. It was then down to my wife to then be vigilant and kind of have that conversation. But actually then when she went home, I woke up the next day in the same position that I fell asleep in. And not once in the 4 days that I was in hospital did anybody come and check my skin, even though I was in with a skin condition. So it was ridiculous.
Do you think there's a part of it that nursing staff or staff in the hospital thought that you're obviously young, you're very independent, you're articulate, you know your condition, so they thought that you were able to care for that? I'm not saying that's...
No, I mean, the most complimentary thing about that is that you said the word young, which I don't necessarily feel. But I think in some respects, like actually, I'm almost 40 and I've been living with this for a long time. But actually, physically, my body feels a lot older. Your body ages differently slightly, I think, after an injury like this. And actually, moving around is quite tiring, even when I'm unwell. And I'm not necessarily as mobile. And I am the expert. However, I'm only the expert on the care that I've been giving to myself since I was 16 years old. Yeah. So I have a care routine that works for me, but that is not necessarily the most up-to-date care routine. And so I might be causing myself harm because I've dropped off everybody else's radar. Yeah. So actually you shouldn't feel afraid to not challenge.
But you shouldn't assume.
But you shouldn't assume that the patient knows best. They know what works for them currently, but actually I think it's the language that you can use. It's not you're doing that wrong or what help do you need. It is what can we do that you would normally do that you might not be able to do while you're in hospital. Absolutely. You know, it's language like that that's more empowering, and every patient that comes through that door is more vulnerable than they were when they were home. And so that every patient that's in our care is reliant on us to do the best that we can do to make sure they're not here for as long as possible.
Of course, thank you so much for speaking
That's
to us,
okay.
Stephen. Thank you very much.
That's all right.